I remember going to my first major pharmacy meeting for a major retailer, and I said, "I've got a plant-based first aid," and he's like, "Those 2 sentences don't go those 2 words don't go in the same sentence," you know? And I'm like, "No, but really, you gotta try this." This was when plant-based wasn't even a term that people were using. And so it was really kinda questionable, like, what does plant-based mean? And of course, fast forward to today, there's a lot more botanical research and consumer understanding.
Jodi Scott is the CEO and co-founder of Green Goo, a first-of-its-kind company bringing plant-based first aid products that don't just heal, they bring relief, radiance, and a whole new relationship with your health. Jodi's here to tell us her story, but first, a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp.
Is something standing between you and your happiness? It was for me. I had to face my depression and the constant negative self-talk. Therapy helped me realize I deserve to be happy. That's why this podcast is called I Choose Health, because I made the choice to heal and I want to share that with you. As a gift to you, we've partnered with BetterHelp as our sponsor to help you start your own healing journey. We all face moments when life feels overwhelming, whether it's stress, anxiety, or just feeling stuck. Talking to someone can make a real difference. And that's where our sponsor, BetterHelp, comes in. BetterHelp offers professional online therapy that's convenient, affordable, and entirely on your schedule. You can connect with a licensed therapist by video, phone, or even chat, whatever works best for you. Let our sponsor, BetterHelp, support you on your journey to better mental health. You can get 10% off your first month by going to betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth. That's betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth for 10% off your first month. Take the first step toward feeling better today.
As a teenager, I decided to live better, so I gave up the meat, eggs, and cheddar. At 20 and 30, I wanted more, so I strengthened my mind and my core. Living a life that is healthier and wealthier because I choose health.
All right, guys, welcome back to the I Choose Health podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Leslie. And today's story is an incredible one, and I think it's one that we all root for because it's family-centered, it's woman-centered, and it's just a mixture of, people wanting to do better for not just themselves, but for those around them. And so I'm really excited to invite to the show Jodi Scott, who is the CEO of Green Goo. So Jodi Scott, welcome to the I Choose Health podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you.
Sam. And Jodi, I want to know, like, specifically why the name Green Goo, and just explain what your company does in terms of the products that it produces and the particular vision of the company as well.
Yes, so we make first aid products. So this is your traditional over-the-counter first aids for cuts, scrapes, various acute and chronic skin conditions. So poison ivy, eczema, sunburn, inflammation, and they're all plant-based. And what makes Green Goose so remarkably different is the fact that we are making these OTC solutions that are registered with the FDA with plants, real plants, not extracts. So we bring the whole plants to our manufacturing facility where we protect the plant integrity, which protects the medicinal profile. So a lot of the plants that people have that are available to them in consumer packaged goods today have been exposed to high heat or chemicals that compromises the plant's integrity. And so we have a special extraction process that yields the highest amounts of the medicinal properties from those plants, and those unique oils go into these solutions, and that's why they work. So you ask why the name Green Goo? Well, we were one of the first plant-based solution to enter the first aid space. And we didn't want to look like every other first aid solution on the shelf because we're not. And we wanted to disrupt first aid, reinvent how we approach first aid. And so when we were trying to come up with a name, we thought, ointment, all of these different terms that are are more common in the OTC space, and we're like, but it's green because it has a
Mhm.
color to it because of the plants, and it's kind of like a goo. And when you
Right.
think about a salve or an ointment, it's kind of this gooey texture. And we thought, well, it's kind of green goo. And then what's interesting is we only named one product Green Goo, and
Mm,
that was our first aid one, which
mm,
is like our first aid kit on the go. It's your Swiss Army knife for cuts and scrapes and so forth. And it was actually our customers who, every time they would pull out a tin of our products, they would call it Green Goo. And I'd be like, no,
mm.
you actually have the dry skin formula. No, you actually have the pain relief. But they're like, no, but I got Green Goo. And so
Um,
very quickly, we went ahead and changed the entire brand to Green Goo. And our goal is to bring more sunshine to this space. So it's bright colors. We have fun little inspiring taglines on the brand, on all the packaging, and a lot of education and information around why these plants work and what they do.
that's amazing. And I wonder as well, like, is there any benefit to having first aid products be, plant-based versus, the traditional items or the traditional products that are used for first aid kits?
To give some context, which I find very interesting when you think about the first aid space. So, a lot of the chemicals that are in the first aid solutions are really only about 100 years old. They are a product of the Industrial Revolution. So,
Mm,
this time frame is the first time that we found a way here in the US to mass produce consumer packaged goods to a lot of people, and we didn't have the transportation or the technology or Amazon same day shipping that
hmm
we have today. And so, and there was this notion that more value meant more volume.
hmm
And so we would have these big tubs of lotion that would get shipped to people that could take sometimes years to get to people's homes. And when you
mm,
put water and some of these other ingredients in there, you need to stabilize it. So a lot of these man-made fragrances, phthalates, paraben, petroleum were born during this time frame. And we didn't know that they were harmful to our health. And
mm,
today, the science very much is very clear that these are endocrine disruptors and they are harmful to our health. And so the benefit of having a plant-based first aid is removing these endocrine disruptors, the fragrances, the phthalates, the parabens, the petrochemicals that are creating friction in our wellness. So when we put these ingredients on and in our skin, because some of
mm,
them just sit on the surface of the skin and damage the microbiome, which is a living organism on our skin that is communicating to our endocrine system, which then communicates to our nervous system and immune system, hey, I'm in a state of fight or flight. And then all of a sudden, cortisol goes up, inflammation goes up, and this impacts our sleep. This impacts our clarity. We start to see in our skin chronic skin conditions, which chronic skin conditions are at an all-time high. And so these various man-made chemicals are creating friction and what the body already knows how to do, which is heal itself. So it's like, why swim upstream when you can find a solution that works better and also eliminates the harmful exposures that we're seeing. And that negative feedback loop is really important because we often think of our skin as just this largest organ. That's all it is. It's just the organ that keeps everything intact, meaning, the other organs internally, our bones and our tissue. And the reality is our skin is born from the same embryonic tissue as our nervous system. It
mm,
is rich in neurotransmitters. So when we put these different harmful chemicals on our skin and absorb them, it then stimulates the nervous system to say, hey, I'm in a low grade of fight or flight. And then again, that negative feedback loop, that immune system responds, your nervous system responds, your endocrine system responds, and all of a sudden, like, you're again seeing different manifestations. I'm not sleeping well. I've got inflammation. I've got cloudy brain. I've got this chronic skin condition that won't go away. And what I love about plant-based first aid is that you can now nourish your skin as a part of your wellness journey that oftentimes gets overlooked.
So, Jody, I want you to kind of like explain that process of discovery as you were talking about, when you were talking about before not realizing how harmful those chemicals were before. Like, when did that first moment hit you? And for those of you and your family, and I want to get into that as well because it's such an amazing story of like realizing, we probably shouldn't be using these, when it comes to treating or working with patients or whatever, it's probably better to use these plant-based. When did that discovery come? And just go through how that discovery came about.
Well, I'm going to rewind because I think you'll really appreciate this story. So, I grew up in the military. We moved around a lot and we were athletes. So, we were very connected to food as fuel and understood that relationship at a young age. So, we were
Mhm.
pretty health conscious. And we were in the middle of a move one day and we had this giant box of skincare products that was in the car with us. And we were annoyed because we're sad we're moving and there's not a lot of space in the car and there's all of us
Mhm.
kids. And I looked at my mom and I said, Mom, why do we have this box of skincare products in the car with us? Why can't it go with the movers? I want more room. And by the way, why do you still have this same box? Because it's moved with us 3 or 4 moves and you still haven't used any of it, which is such a common thing with skincare stuff. And my mom goes, Well, the movers can't take it because it's flammable and they can't take
Mhm.
anything that's flammable. And we go, Why is it flammable? She's like, Well, there's petroleum in it and it's flammable. So, they can't take stuff like that in the moving van with them. And we're like, "You put flammable stuff on your skin?" We're like, "That's so gross."
Mm.
And that was, like, just a moment in time that was very clear to me that I was like, "I would never do that." And, of course, I didn't really know what that meant. And I
Mhm.
also was like, "I'm never gonna have a cluttered cabinet like my mom with all this stuff." And, of course, fast forward, what happens? You do the thing that you said you're never going to do, and all of a sudden have all these, like, skincare solutions, and you buy stuff and you don't like the way it works, but you're afraid to throw it away because you invested in it. And so now at this time in my life, fast forward to when my sister's in herb school, I had just finished my master's in health psychology. I was training resident physicians on the biopsychosocial model, specializing in psychoneuroimmunology, very, very much in the medical field and mindful of holistic healthcare and mind body medicine. And I have now eliminated all of those, like, really bad skincare products, so I'm mindful of the ingredients. However, I'm pregnant, and I get a cut, and I go
Mm.
into my first aid cabinet, and, of course, my first aid cabinet is the exception. Like, you open it up, and it's all this, like, one-time use, like, clutter and chaos. Half of it's expired, not sure when I used the last one. And I pull out the topical antiseptic, and I thought, "Well, I'm gonna look at the ingredients. It's been a minute since I've looked at this stuff." And I was like, "Ew, I do not wanna put this on my body, I'm pregnant." And then I'm like, "I
Mhm.
also don't wanna put this on my daughter because we probably use more of these things on your kiddos than anyone else in the household because when they get that cut or that scrape or that bug bite, that's the thing that you go to." So I went to my sister and I was like, "Hey," I'm like, "Why are we making this exception? Are you using
Mhm.
these traditional first aid stuff?" And she's like, "I am." I'm like, "Look at these ingredients. How did we overlook this?" And so that's when the research started, and we were like, "Oh, we are not alone." The natural consumer is willing to abandon their natural ethos because they are
Mhm.
told these one-time use chemical solutions are the only things that get the job done. And
Mhm.
then that's when we found out that chronic skin conditions are at an all-time high, and this first aid space is very much used for 7 to 10 days. If symptoms persist, which they often do, go see your physician. And there's this other idea that if it doesn't sting, burn, or dry it out, it must not be working, which is
Mhm.
incredibly counterproductive to how the skin works and heals
Right.
itself. And so that's when we decided, okay, what if we can make a plant-based solution that's first superior in efficacy? So whether you care about ingredients or not, you're just getting better performance. And by the
Mhm.
way, it's also plant-based. And so Green Goo was born.
You know, when you just said that, it took me back many years back to my childhood, and I always hated whenever I fell, had a bruise or cut, and then mom is bringing the alcohol out or hydrogen peroxide or whatever it is. I'm like, no, this is about to burn, or whatever else it was. So I'm glad that you challenged that thinking that it had to be something that has some type of sting to it. So that's really cool that that was something you guys explored and decided to create products that ethically would not create that and then also be good for the skin.
And what's really fun about, like, specifically the Green Goo First Aid is that when we were creating the formula, we had that same memory, right? Where you're like, "No, don't bring it, it's just gonna sting more." And, of course,
Yeah.
there's also the Band-Aid ritual with kiddos, and the Band-Aid typically is not offering any medicinal service, it's just that you're buying some time while the stinging is happening for the kiddo, and
Mhm.
then eventually it kinda calms it down. And so we wanted to create a formula that meets the consumer in that way. So not only is it a topical antiseptic, but it also takes the sting and the itch out, and it slows down the bleeding, speeds up the healing, and so kiddos love to grab for it. And it's great for
Mhm.
pets too, because think about when they get a hot spot or a cut, the issue is that they want to lick it and they want to lick the bad ingredient. And so
Mhm.
when you have a wound care solution that also addresses the sting and the itch, it's pretty great. So then kids go and grab the Green Goo Goo for their boo-boo, and they can just put it on, and, not only will it have the antiseptic properties, but then it also offers, um, the relief that we're looking for those just, like, a little annoying moments.
Now I wonder, like when you guys were developing Green Goo, was the consumer, the average consumer, the first person on your mind, or was it like big picture thinking about reframing the way first aid kits or first aid products are created? Like, was it consumer first, or was it like big picture thinking first?
I'd say it was big picture first because we were like, we want to change the conversation. We want to change what's happening in first aid. And it's super interesting that like first aid's in one section and health and beauty is in the other. And yet like our skin is really this one amazing, huge organ that is a bridge between those two. Like, why can't first aid and health and beauty be all in one as a part of our
Mhm.
wellness? But then from that, went into looking at consumer behavior and studying the data. And when you look at a first aid set, it's very clear what people are looking for. There's cuts, there's scrapes, there's bug bites, there's sunburns, there's scarring. So you know what that first aid needs to look like. But then it's really overwhelming when you look at a first aid set. Like think about when you're running into your pharmacy and you're like, I've got poison ivy or a cold sore. Where's that section? What am I looking for? And so for us in formulating, in the spirit of opening up that first aid cabinet that's just full of chaos and reminding myself of that moment when I was younger with my mom and saying, how can we simplify first aid? How can we make it more like less clutter and more versatile? So most of our solutions address broadly a variety of different first aid issues. And when we were formulating, what was interesting is like when you think about when you get a blister on your foot and someone gets a cold sore, they are two different body behaviors, right? For two different reasons. However, the response that the body is doing is very similar. So when we were creating our formulas, we were like, okay, well, what herbs are going to bring more oxygen to the wound site, reduce that inflammation, help with the healing, take the sting and itch out, and can it work for both a blister and a cold sore? And the great news is yes. And so that gives you a really versatile formula to address some of these just like basic topical first aid needs.
Speak about how cool it is, as you know, you guys, your sisters that you're working with, right? And how has that process been? Because I know it's not always easy, depending on the relationship that you sustain with family, to go into family business, right? It doesn't always work out well for a lot of families. So speak on that and where everyone was at that particular point in their lives, right? Because I know it is on the site where you guys talk about uh, where you were at your specific points where you were professionally, personally. So just speak about that and how that relationship has worked for the betterment of the company and just how it's flourished over the years?
Well, my sister's an herbalist and a midwife, and then being in the military, my mom had to learn how not to reinvent her career every move. And so she became an early adopter of computers and saw the writing on the wall that, hey, perhaps this could give me a mobile career. She was actually my first computer teacher. So she taught herself how to code and create
Mm,
websites and do graphic design. And so when the three of us huddled up to create Green Goo, it was kind of this like perfect trifecta with my sister and her
mm,
herbal wisdom, me and my medical background. I had just started my first business that was a hobby, and I say hobby gone wild because it turned
mm,
into just a weekend bed and breakfast into a multi-layered business. And so it's just kind of getting my footing there and understanding what it meant to scale a business. And then my mom and her tech background, which everyone needs a tech person.
mhm,
She's a great person to call and solve those problems. And so it worked really well. And we deeply cared for each other, had a wonderful relationship. My sister graduated from high school early so she could come to college with me. We were college roommates. She lives one house down from me right now. And having that value in the relationship was really important, and it created a strong foundation for us, not only on the sense that we cared about each other, but then also bring in our tactical and strategic superpowers. Our zones of genius were very different.
mhm,
And I would say that also helps because when we were doing some counseling in the early stages of building the business, because we had heard often that family businesses can get dysfunctional,
mhm.
and then it breeds dysfunction, and then you hire dysfunctional employees, and then the culture becomes dysfunctional, and then the relationships become tarnished. And for us, we just didn't want to compromise the relationship. So we got early counsel on how to, best position ourselves within the organization. And some really great advice we got was get to know each other's zones of genius and
Mm,
really support that and put each other in that lane. And it just happened to be that our lanes were very different. So we didn't have that overlap, which was really helpful. But it was also a friendly reminder to respect those lanes the same
mhm.
way you would an employee. You wouldn't question them and go, "Oh, I've got the family card, so I'm gonna
Yep.
play this a little bit differently in this setting." You don't get to play the family card. You treat each individual, with respect in that same fashion. And, that was really great advice for us in respecting each other's lanes and not having us feel like we were not able to feel at our full potential in how
Mm.
we want to show up at work. And that allows each person to take action on their sense of purpose, which gives such a rewarding feeling when you're at work.
So I know there's a lot of first aid companies out there that obviously they make the rubbing alcohols, the hydrogen peroxides, whatever it is, that they've been selling for a very long time. Uh, when you started Green Goo, when you guys started Green Goo, was there any pushback from companies like that were seeing that you guys were having a positive impact on the industry and probably thought like, okay, we need to kind of push back against this?
I think there's twofold, and even starting at the top, like, I remember going to my first major pharmacy meeting for a major retailer, and I said, "I've got a plant-based first aid," and he's like, those 2 words don't go in the same sentence," you know? And I'm like, "No, but really, you gotta try this," and of course, this was when plant-based wasn't even a term that people were using. And so
Hmm.
it was really kinda questionable, like, what does plant-based mean? And, of course, fast forward to today, there's a lot more botanical research and consumer understanding. I think in the early days, there wasn't a whole lot of conviction on the major players that plant-based was going to have any value in the marketplace. So I think there was less, you know, um, pushback there. It was just like, "Okay, well, let's see if this really sticks around." Now you're seeing these major players look at acquiring and integrating into their portfolios because the consumer is now voting and showing that that demand is there. And so, I think there's more of that that's happening for sure. I mean,
Mhm.
don't get me wrong, I've had a couple players try to push on, you're in my spot on the shelf, let's make it hard for you
Mhm.
moments. Um, but I think, like, in the bigger picture, the evolution that I've seen, having been in the early days of it and seeing the transition is now, um, it's such a big wave that the bigger
Mhm.
companies are now inviting the change.
I think you guys are also in a very unique space because, you're also a woman creating products within that scientific field. So I wonder if there was like some people who wondered like, why are these three women, making these first aid products, right? And then they're taking it to another level, like, because for me, like that guy said, first aid and plant-based don't go together. I don't even think I would have even thought of that. For myself being a vegan, I've always looked for like holistic options or ways of dealing with things. But I guess for me, this even down to the first aid products, I guess I kind of limited to like, okay, well, this is just the products that we have. This is what we'll use. So, you know, I think that was a long run on to ask like, why was it important for you to make sure that the company was one established on those values of one family, but then also that it was woman centered to put that image of strong, smart women, out there, making this impact.
I think for us, it was initially just a happy accident. It was three women who had the medical background and the passion for changing healthcare, improving it, and bringing more wellness and longevity to everyone. I'll give accolades to it was actually Walmart when we were first doing business with them that they introduced us to this women-owned concept and said, "This is something to be really proud of, and you guys should share more of this." And they actually invited us to, a women accelerator program through the Walmart channel, which I just thought was so cool and so progressive because that wasn't happening. I mean, this was 10
Mhm.
years ago that wasn't happening. And I'd say they were one of the early companies, which you would never suspect, that were advocating for more entrepreneurial equity across the board, which was really cool. Um, and I think, we've never taken the position that we're anti-Western medicine, and I think that's really
Mhm.
important. We're just in a space where there is an opportunity to have clean ingredients that are gonna give you better results so that you can set your body up for optimal health so that when or if you need a major medical intervention, you are healthier to recover. And a physician loves to work on a healthy patient. And so the reality is
Mhm.
is we have DNA, like we were talking about before we got online, like things chronic diseases happen sometimes without any explanation and very much could be related to our DNA and that's a whole nother conversation, right? Or a major medical accident. And when you can go into that in the most optimal form where you've eliminated a lot of this friction and your body's in a place of better recovery, you have a better outcome. And so that's what I really like to instill, which is you've got a bug bite. Why put a chemical, a
Mhm.
petrochemical, a fragrance, a forever chemical, a phthalate?
Mhm.
Why bother when you can have a plant that's going to take that itch out, take that sting out, and also invite the opportunity of building back our skin barrier that has been severely compromised through continued use of these ingredients in our shampoo, conditioner, soap. Now it's, in our water and all this kind of stuff. And it's also another opportunity to like give nutrition through our skin the same way we ingest nutrition.
Mhm.
And when you do that, you actually feel the difference. Not only do you see the difference, which is really cool, like healthy skin, we know a glowing skin suggests good health, but you also will feel the difference.
I wonder as well, like, has there been like I'm talking like big. Well, obviously, the big win is obviously the company being successful. But in terms of getting your products into uh, traditional medical spaces like hospitals and clinics and maybe nurse offices and schools, um, speak to that as well. Like, has that been something you guys have been able to accomplish as well?
And it's been very organic. It's an area that it's not an easy system in terms of like, there's just not like one buyer that goes and gets you and puts you in
Mm,
front of all of these different people and so or different medical settings. And so what's been interesting about Green Goo is it's been the patients telling the physicians and then the
mm,
physicians reaching out to us and wanting to know more. So for example, John Hopkins has been endorsing and sharing Green Goo for over a decade in their scleroderma
nice.
and skin condition department. But it was their patients coming to them saying, "Hey, I'm getting relief from Green Goo." And they're like, they called us and they said, "Who are you and what are you doing?" Because our
Right.
patients are really loving this. And so that's oftentimes how we hear and share more in the medical setting is based on our customers. And it's interesting. I had a customer the other day whose daughter has eczema and she had a breakout for the last year. And she's like, "We have tried everything over the counter
Mm,
and prescription. And we heard through the grapevine that you have a solution." And she's like, "And why would a natural solution work better than anything else we've been exposed to? But hey, I'm coming with low expectations, but I'm willing to give it a try because we're not sleeping." And anyone who suffers from eczema knows what that means when the lights go out and it's quiet, all you feel is that stinging and that itching. And um, so she's like, "I'm reinforcing. I'm here with low expectations." And so she shared some pictures with us and we helped her with her regimen in terms of which ones to start with and then which green goose to phase into the next stage. And she took a picture in 2 weeks and she's like, "I can't believe this. We're sleeping at night. It's the first time my daughter has smiled in so long. And look at this. We're now at the part where we're working with the scarring."
right.
So super cool in terms of being able to exceed expectations, especially when people have just been in a state of suffering for so long trying these various solutions.
What has Green Goo taught you about like things around your diet and just overall like health, right? Because I imagine, but I guess I haven't access, but in terms of diet, would you identify yourself as plant-based in terms of your diet?
I'm mostly plant-based. So I was
Okay.
vegan for almost 15 years.
Mm,
And it's still my go-to in most of my food choices. I'm not
mm,
100% anymore. Um, And from a food standpoint, it just reminded me of the value of like whole foods, fresh foods, antioxidants, and hydration, that all those things can come from your food. And they also
mm,
can take away from your health, right? Like certain foods can pull hydration out of you. They can pull like not choosing something that's rich in antioxidants or what have you. And the same is with your skin and also the value of that whole plant versus processed food. I mean, that is the single most important differentiator with Green Goo is the fact that we're protecting that plant integrity. So you think about like, would you rather have the freshly squeezed orange juice or the vitamin C pack? So anytime you can get that entourage effect from that plant wholeness and that the integrity, the medicinal properties of that plant have been protected, you're going to get a better systemic response from that. And so I think of that in that lens, but then also just a more holistic approach. Like, never in a million years would I have thought that managing my skin would make me more grounded, would
mm,
influence my sleep. And so it's opened up another way of looking at my wellness journey and my longevity, where a lot of what we do with our skin is like short-term results, whether it's a cut or a scrape, or we want this like to look this way, like someone sells you on like plumper lips or like
mm,
whatever. And the reality is like when you feed your skin the nutrition it deserves, it impacts you in so many other ways that you would never imagine. And inflammation doesn't necessarily just mean achy bones. Inflammation is also that chronic condition, but it's also clarity, the foggy brain, your sleep.
Hmm.
And so nourishing your skin can actually like impact you all the way down the road to like your sleep and your clarity and your energy. And so that's what Green Goo has really taught me.
Well, Jody, I really appreciate this. And just share with our listeners one, um, obviously, your information and where they can connect with you. And just like let us know what you have coming up next as well.
Yeah, greengoo.com. And you can also find us on Amazon. Best place to reach out. And yeah, come check it out. Come clean out your first aid cabinet and get yourself that first aid bundle and start there. And you'll see how 4 products can touch so many places in your life and just simplify.
This is amazing. I think this is just such an amazing story because I think even before we connected, I wouldn't have even thought about this. So this was really great. It's really great. So, well, again, to my audience, thank you so much for tuning in. And this is Stefan just reminding you that choosing health is about choosing power, possibility, and purpose.